We turn to Brett McGurk, White House National Security Council Coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa. Good to have you here, Brett.
Thanks, Margaret. Great to be here.
We're watching the breaking news. This is a deal you negotiated. What can you tell us about how these three women who've been transferred to the Red Cross are doing?
Well, I just confirmed with my Israeli counterparts that they're now in Israeli custody, so this has just happened. Look, I know they're alive. I'm sure they've been held in deplorable conditions over 470 days. But the Israelis have a very good system to take them into their care, and they're going to get the care they need and be reunited with their families.
It appeared that even up until this morning, it was in question whether Hamas was going to go through with this. The Israelis said they hadn't handed over the names of the captives. Why? And do we know much about the well-being of the three Americans that are still being held?
Well, look, this deal was negotiated over a year for good reason. It's a detailed, complex arrangement to leave nothing to chance. And even up to last night, I was up until 4 o'clock in the morning when this finally went into place to make sure that everything went according to the plan. Hamas owed the list of the three names. That had to happen for the ceasefire to go into effect. That was delayed a couple hours. It eventually happened, and now we have the news today. You have a full ceasefire in effect in Gaza. You have about 800 trucks of aid getting into Gaza today.
800?
800 trucks of aid should reach Gaza today. And you've had the three girls now, again, reunited, hopefully with their families, and they're now in Israeli custody.
So the UN says an average of 72 trucks per day went in December, and that's been the case in January. Is there even the capacity for the Israelis to search these trucks and allow in that food? Do you expect 800 trucks to make it into Gaza today?
That's why I've been in the Middle East for the last month nonstop to make sure everything is ready to go. This was not put together in the last week. This has been put together really since May when President Biden laid out this framework. He developed this framework with the Emir of Qatar and with the President of Egypt, President Sisi. He announced it to the world in May. It was unanimously endorsed by the UN Security Council. We thought we were close in August, Margaret, and then we had 6 hostages killed in a tunnel underneath Rafah. I was just in your green room talking to the mother, or speaking with the mother of Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, who was killed tragically in August. It was that incident in August when Hamas killed those hostages that we decided to flip the script. There was not a deal because Hamas would not agree to release hostages. We supported the Israelis in going after Hezbollah. They took out Hezbollah. In Lebanon. We have a ceasefire in Lebanon. We have a new government in Lebanon. That isolated Hamas. Iran is in the weakest position it's been in the Middle East in decades. So we went back to the table in December. Hamas, for the first time, was ready to accept the May framework and begin to release hostages. It wasn't until early January that they actually approved the hostage list, and that's how we got to the result today.
But do we know Keith Siegel, Sagi Chen, and Idan Alexander, how they're doing?
Keith will come out in phase 1. Sagi will come out in phase 1. Idan was a uniformed Israeli soldier. He is phase 2, but we are committed. I think you just heard this from Mike Waltz, and we've been working seamlessly with the incoming team. I think this is a testament to President Biden and to President Trump, allowing us to work together. I worked with Steve Witkoff over the last week. Again, a partnership, I think, historic to help get this done.
Trump's envoy.
We are committed to getting Idan out as early as possible. I spoke with Adi Alexander, Idan's father, just last night.
So Prime Minister Netanyahu described this overnight as a temporary ceasefire, and he says he has permission to begin fighting as needed. Do you believe he sees this as just a strategic pause, or that he actually wants to end this war?
The way the deal is structured, on day 16, the negotiations begin for phase 2. Phase 2 will begin a negotiation for the exchange of soldiers to Palestinian prisoners, but also the conditions have to be set for phase 2. And we support the Israelis in making sure those conditions are set so Hamas can never come back to power in Gaza. Hamas can never again threaten Israel from Gaza. Those conditions have to be set. We in the Biden administration have been very clear. We want to see this deal reach all 3 phases. Every hostage come home. I think the Trump administration very much shares that objective. And the template, the roadmap, again, that the president set out in May, this was the roadmap ultimately to ending the war, getting everybody home is the only way to do it. That roadmap is now in place. We have a ceasefire today in Gaza, and we have a good chance to get every hostage home, and we got to do everything we can to make that happen.
Well, Hamas, according to Secretary Blinken, has recruited almost as many new militants as it has lost over the course of this war. Blinken said that this week.
Hamas has been significantly decimated. Its leader, Yahya Sinwar, was killed in October. Without that, we would not be at this deal. Hamas on October 7th was an organized military formation. It invaded Israel with 3,500 troops in military formations, combat brigades. It is now no longer able to do that. It does not have military capacity.
But that argues that Israel has done something that may backfire on them. in terms of the humanitarian situation that has allowed Hamas not to lose support, but to continue to recruit?
To get the, I've worked closely with my Israeli colleagues. I've spent hours with Prime Minister Netanyahu. This is a deal that he fully supports. They agree there's a moral debt to these hostages. You have to get them out. And Israel's also going to make sure that it protects its national security. And we're going to make sure we did that. You know, Margaret, we got this deal without that wider Middle East war that everybody was predicting. Americans did not get drawn into a wider Middle East war. We defended Israel from Iranian missiles. We supported Israel going after Hezbollah. We supported Israel going after Hamas. We have defanged Iran's proxy networks around the region. And that led to the isolation of Hamas to actually get this deal today. That's how we got to this point.
Okay. I have to take a break here, Brett, so don't mean to cut you off. But we will have more questions, but we have to take a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Face the Nation. We're continuing our conversation now with Brett McGurk of the National Security Council under President Biden. Brett, I just want to pick up where we left off. Just this past week, President Biden gave one of his last interviews, and he shared a private conversation with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Take a listen to it.
I said, but Bibi, I said, you can't be carpet bombing these communities. And he said to me, well, you did it. You carpet bombed, not his exact words, but you carpet bombed Berlin. You dropped a nuclear weapon. You killed thousands of innocent people because you had to in order to win a war.
And President Biden went on to say that's why the entire UN and international order was created, to stop that from ever happening again. How much do you think Israel's standing in the world has been damaged by the conduct of its military?
Well, Mark, that was a conversation early on when the debate was whether or not the Israelis should go in on the ground. And we had a debate with them about that. Ultimately, we supported them, and they were right, because Hamas was living in 400 miles of tunnels underneath Gaza. There was no way to root out Hamas without going into Gaza. And frankly,
but
you can see,
dropping bombs
but you can
on
see
buildings.
Hamas. But I'm just going back to what the conversation was about. It was about how this was going to go. And look, we've worked very closely with the Israelis. Too many people have died in this war. That's why we work so hard to get to where we are today with a ceasefire. The ceasefire today, this framework, this roadmap the president laid out in May, was the only way to end the war. And the only way to end the war was, frankly, with massive pressure on Hamas and knocking out the other proxies that were supporting Hamas. I just have to emphasize this again. Yeah. When Hezbollah was firing on Israel every single day, it was Hassan Nasrallah's position that they would not stop shooting at Israel and making northern Israel a no man's land until Israel accepted all of Hamas's terms in Gaza. Israel had to knock out Hezbollah to get this deal. That's what happened with the ceasefire at the end of November. That's what opened up the space to get this deal. It's been a brutal war, but to end it, we had to get the ceasefire deal. And to do that, we had to support Israel and back them up, and we did.
Well, we will see if the ceasefire becomes an end to the war and there's more diplomacy ahead. Brett McGurk, thank you for sharing the details. We're going to turn now to Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who joins us this morning from Seneca, South Carolina. Good morning to you, Senator.
Good morning.
I imagine you are supportive of this ceasefire and Mike Waltz's pledge to see it through.
Yeah, I very much appreciate what Brett and Steve Witkoff have done. Let me just say this. These people would not be coming out if Donald Trump had not demanded they be out. Everything Brett said about pressure on Hamas and Iran is true, but the game changer when Trump said, I want them out, all hell will be to pay. Now, here's what I'm hoping. They come out, the deal holds, but what does the end of the war look like? I want to reinforce something to you. This war will never end with Hamas in charge of Gaza, politically or militarily. Their days are numbered. And the next question for the world is, what do we do about the Iran nuclear program? That's where we're going to move to next. There's diplomacy. There's a 1 in a trillion chance you'll degrade the Iranian nuclear program through diplomacy. There's a 90% chance you'll degrade it through military action by Israel, supported by the United States. So the next topic I will be engaging in with President Trump is to take this moment in time to decimate the Iran nuclear program because they're so exposed.
What does that mean?
Help Israel deliver a knockout blow.
What does that mean? You're going to urge him to have Israel bomb Iran's facilities that are underground and would require U.S. military support to actually be effective?
I'm going to urge the decimation of the Iranian nuclear program. I don't think diplomacy works. Brett will tell you what they have done to Hezbollah and Hamas has been amazing. The proxies are incredibly weakened. Israel can go anywhere they want to go. This is a religious Nazi regime. They want to destroy the Jewish state. They want to purify Islam and drive us out of the Mideast. It would be like negotiating with Hitler. I am hoping there will be an effort by Israel to decimate the Iran nuclear program supported by the United States. And if we don't do that, it will be a historical mistake.
Lindsey Graham, I have a lot to get to on the domestic front, but that is quite a marker to lay down. I want to ask you about what you are working on domestically with Stephen Miller, Trump's Homeland Security advisor, on border security. And I understand it's part of the massive Republican reconciliation bill that's being put together. Do you have a top line number yet on how much this is all going to cost?
Yes, $100 billion for border security through reconciliation would be enough to hire ICE agents, create new detention beds, and finish the wall and put technology in place over 4 years. $200 billion will be given to the military to make it more capable of deterring China. $100 billion for border, $200 billion for the military. I met with Mike Johnson yesterday. He's a dear friend. I admire him greatly. He has a political problem in the House. He wants to do one big, beautiful bill. I've never been more worried about an attack on our homeland than I am now. With the rise of ISIS in Afghanistan and wars all over the world, I think the number one priority for the Republican Party should be to secure that border. You need new money to do it. And if we don't, we're playing Russian roulette with our own national security. Border first, military funding first, get the tax cuts and spending reductions put together later on. You need to secure that border like our life depended on it.
Well, this bill is going to be bigger than the $300 billion you just laid out. What's the timetable on that? Because Johnson says
bigger.
Memorial Day.
Well, I hope we can get there, but to those who want to reduce spending, I'm giving you an opportunity to come meet me next week. You've got to cut spending that's reconciliation compliant, and we got enough votes to reduce spending. So can we do $2.5 trillion over 10 years? Let's give it a try. I want to do two things: cut spending and make the tax cuts permanent. The Secretary of Treasury, Steve Hegseth, said if the tax cut expire, it will be a catastrophe for our economy. I don't believe there's one Republican out there, if they were pushed, would let the tax cuts expire, because that's a $4.5 trillion tax increase. I want to cut spending, but my number one priority is to secure that border quickly.
Well, we will watch the politics of the possible with the very complicated caucus in the House.
Yes.
Let me ask you about the Senate, though, because you are on the Judiciary Committee. Kash Patel, the pick to run the FBI, doesn't even have a hearing scheduled yet. In his 2022 memoir, Bill Barr said of Kash Patel, he's someone with no background as an agent, would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. He has virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency. The idea of moving him into a role like this showed a shocking detachment from reality. Was Attorney General Barr wrong then and wrong now?
Yeah, he was wrong then and he's wrong now. And I take my advice on Kash Patel from Trey Gowdy, dear friend from South Carolina who worked with Kash. Kash was a public defender. He was a prosecutor. He worked with Trey Gowdy about the Russia hoax. So I do think he has the experience. He has the trust of the president. And we'll see how all this plays out. But Trey Gowdy is enthusiastically supporting Kash Patel, and that means a lot to me.
Well, okay. But he's got a list he's published, Kash Patel has. He published it in a book of enemies. It includes people like the FBI director, Defense Secretary Austin, Bill Barr, former White House counsel Pat Cipollone, former CIA director Gina Haspel, the head of CENTCOM. I mean, do you take him at his word here that these are an enemies list and you're going to put him in a law enforcement role to go after him?
I believe the hearing will expose him to be a very qualified man of the law. He wrote a book. He'll have to answer questions about what's in the book. But I'm ready to vote for him because I know him too. See, you never asked me about the Russia hoax that he exposed. People on the right believe that he was part of the solution, not the problem. You asked a good question of Brett. Has Israel suffered because of this war? They went too far on the world stage. Here's what's happened on the world stage. The International Criminal Court is going to be sanctioned by the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, because they're trying to prosecute the Prime Minister and Defense
Lindsey Graham, this is a far cry from the question about Kash Patel. You took me all the way to Israel from Kash Patel. Are you you're committing to vote for him no matter what?
Yeah. Well,
you are going to vote for Kash Patel?
I won't say no matter what, but yes, I am ready to vote for Kash Patel because you will never ask me the role he played in exposing the darkest moment of the FBI since J. Edgar Hoover. That's why I trust him. Okay.
Ask him about going after journalists, which he's also said. I'm interested in the answer to that question.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We'll be right back.
Sure Democratic friends will ask him, and you shouldn't worry about Kash Patel.
Okay.
You should worry about reporting the news fairly, which you don't do when it comes to everything Trump.
Lindsey Graham, you're a guest on this program because we wanted to hear you out. And we welcome you back, as we often do, anytime, to Legacy Media. We'll be right back. We turn now to Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine. Good morning to you.
Margaret, great to be with you. Thanks.
I want to ask you about some of the positions you hold on key committees that have a role in in going through the confirmation process for some of Mr. Trump's picks. Senator Rubio is expected to be swiftly confirmed as Secretary of State. You expect him in on day one?
I do. He visited my office before the hearing. He did very well at the hearing, and I think we are likely to act on day one, and he'll get a strong bipartisan vote.
When it comes to some of the other picks, Democrats have very little say, frankly, because Republicans have this 53-seat majority, so they don't need Democratic votes. You sharply questioned Pete Hegseth this past week, who is the pick to run the Pentagon. You asked about his willingness to break oaths, having cheated on his second wife and the mother of a child born 2 months before, when he had told police he was having consensual sex with a woman in Monterey, California, who filed a claim of sexual assault, and he filed a financial settlement. Why did you choose to put that issue of character so front and center instead of asking him about policies?
I believe he would be a very dangerous Secretary of Defense. And so my observation of my Republican colleagues is the only reason they ever vote no on a nominee is either a belief of gross incompetence in terms of qualifications or serious character deficit. That's why Matt Gaetz withdrew, because the Senate Republicans felt on both of those counts he was a non-starter. I believe my questions of Pete Hegseth about his serial infidelity, about the allegation of sexual assault that he refused to disclose to President-elect Trump and the transition team, and his own mother's allegation that he's a serial abuser of women, I think those are the kinds of things that might affect how Republicans view this, if not in the committee, possibly on the floor. We'll see. I think there's likely to be committee action as early as late tomorrow in the Armed Services Committee. We'll see when there's action on the floor.
To actually confirm him. The Wall Street Journal editorial board, which is not liberal by anyone's definition, said Hegseth made noises about restoring U.S. military deterrence. That's something, but appears we're on track to have a Secretary of Defense whose real views are a mystery. Wasn't it also important to hear what his plans are for China and the like? Because it looks like he is going to sail through if Republican leadership can keep Republicans in line and get them all to deliver the votes they need.
Well, and Margaret, I think that if you look at the entire hearing, a number of his views were put on the table. I had 7 minutes. It was so unusual to have a Secretary of Defense nominee refuse to even meet with any of the Democratic members of the committee, except for the chairman, RFK has met with Democratic members, the Secretary of Labor nominee, Secretary of Army, Secretary of Navy, Secretary of State. They're all meeting with the Democratic members of the committee. But when he refused to meet with us, and you only have 7 minutes, we divided up topics. I asked him about what I consider to be glaring faults of character. Other members of the committee asked him about positions on strategy, the role of women in combat, whether he is qualified to run an organization of the size of the Pentagon. I think overall in the hearing, we put a lot of material on the table for folks to consider.
Let me ask you about immigration. You're a former governor. Incoming border czar Tom Homan has said that there will be massive deportation raids beginning as soon as Mr. Trump takes office. There are just about 300,000 undocumented individuals believed to be living in your state, according to Pew Research. And I know your current governor, Youngkin, has pledged to fully support efforts through state law enforcement or the National Guard. How do you think this is going to work?
Well, I don't exactly know how the administration is going to do it, but let me tell you, I'm hearing significant concerns from many sectors in the Virginia economy: agriculture, hospitality, healthcare, construction, that massive deportation raids would be an absolute gut punch to the Virginia and American economy. And if you add to that the Trump threat of massive tariffs, I think you're going to see a lot of pain for consumers and a lot of pain for employers if they carry through on mass deportation. Now, look, you got a president who says a lot of things and then chooses not to do them. So I don't know exactly what this is going to look like.
Yeah.
But I would say that the economy of Virginia and the economy of this country is going to suffer through mass deportations and tariffs if they go forward with what the president has said he will do.
Well, the Biden administration prioritizes criminals in their roundups and deportations. The Trump administration says they're also going to target criminals. Do you think this is going to look different?
Well, it's I do think the Biden administration prioritizes criminals who are a public safety risk, who pose a threat of violence. The Trump administration could go much broader than that. You know, looking at folks, I mean, for example, there's a bill that's pending in the Senate right now that would deport people on the basis of an arrest, even if they've not been convicted of anything. A shoplifting arrest, even if they've not been convicted of anything. A fundamental aspect of our society is that an arrest doesn't mean anything unless there's a conviction, because people get arrested all the time for things that they didn't do. So if the Trump administration says, look, an arrest leads to deportation even without a conviction, yep, it's going to look completely different than what the policy has been during the Biden administration.
Senator Tim Kaine, thank you for your time today. We'll be back in a moment. We may be seeing the beginning of the end when it comes to Israel's war with Gaza, but the struggle facing the children in the region is far from over. We want to turn now to Janti Soeripto, the head of Save the Children. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Margaret.
You have teams inside of Gaza. We just heard from Brett McGurk, as many as 800 trucks ready to go into Gaza. Have any of yours actually made it in yet?
Not as of 10 minutes ago, Margaret. We have 60 trucks waiting in that queue, all loaded up with warm clothing, shoes for kids, pallets with medicines, malnutrition treatment, which is sorely needed. We haven't as yet seen any go in, but that could have happened over the last couple of minutes.
And it's incredibly difficult just to get in through the security screenings. I think the peak has been 200 or so trucks per day. So to scale up to 800 is pretty incredible if they can pull that off.
Yeah.
But when I look at some of these statistics, they are just jaw-dropping. 1.1 million kids in Gaza, half the population, need food. They're urgent need, surviving on one meal a day after 15 months of war. What state are these kids in?
There's estimates that there's about 300,000 children in real acute need of malnutrition treatment. This is not just food, right? This is a medical treatment to make sure that they don't get real long-term consequences of their malnutrition, cognitive as well as physical. There are 150,000 pregnant and lactating women inside of Gaza who urgently need micronutrients as well to avoid those same consequences. So the needs are enormous.
I read, and this was particularly heartbreaking, that Save the Children is also going to try to connect more than 17,000 separated children to find family members.
That's right. It's going to be a huge effort. You know, it's a real moment of hope and peril at the same time. We know.
How do you do that?
Well, what we'll do is we do family tracing. So we're going to try to find extended family, even if not direct parents, extended families, aunts, uncles, nephews, neighbors sometimes, the community where they were, find members from that community, vet them, check backgrounds, and then the painstaking process of reuniting these children, many of whom have been either displaced or lost, and some even displaced outside of Gaza, help them reconnect to that community. A lot of mental health, psychosocial support, cash to make sure that that family is also able to care for them in already a situation of where most of them will have lost everything. So it's a long and hard, painstaking process that also needs real sensitive and professional social workers.
When will those professionals be able to get in?
Well, we hope as soon as possible.
In phase one?
That is the real ask and hope.
Weeks.
We need urgently to get in pediatric medical workers. We need those social workers in, those case management workers to protect children. We need a refreshment. We have a workforce of 250 Palestinians in Gaza who've been at it for 15 months. They are exhausted. They also need to get back to whatever's left of their homes. We urgently need to be able to surge in adequate capacity and specialism.
So Hamas is not going to govern Gaza. They're not governing Gaza now. It's largely chaos. Yeah. How, practically speaking, can you get all these things done if, as is now Israeli law, the largest organization, UNRWA, is now going to be banned? If the UN can't do this through the UN RWA, who does this?
That is going to be problematic. The operational infrastructure from UNRWA is massive. We've said that now for 15 months. All of us, our humanitarian agencies, cannot replace UNRWA just like that, if ever. 13,000 UNRWA staff inside of Gaza. Schools, warehouses, trucks, everything that are being used also by organizations like ours. So that would be difficult, and we would hope that there would be certain exemptions to allow for that operational effectiveness to happen.
Because it would be illegal for you to do any work with them.
Yeah.
Right. You have a tremendous amount of work, Janti Soeripto, ahead of you. Thank you very much for sharing with us. And I know you've been working in California as well with children out there.
As well, yeah. Well, we try to be there for kids wherever the crisis hits.
All right. Thank you. We'll be right back. That's it for us today on this very busy Sunday. CBS News will be on the air and streaming starting at 7 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow with CBS Mornings, followed by our coverage of Mr. Trump's second inauguration all day long, including a primetime special at 10 p.m. I'll see you then. For Face the Nation, I'm Margaret Brennan.